thought I'd talk to you about the different sorts of Panama hats. There's basically three primary styles. It's the way that they weave the straw. The straw is exactly the same. It's just how do they pattern it. Now, the most common Panama hat straw that you'll find anywhere in the world is the Brisa. And the Brisa is like a crisscross pattern. It's got really good ventilation through it. It flows beautifully. It looks really fine, but there's also the weakest hat. It breaks the easiest. They will tend to crack along the brim here. You can get cracks along here as well. It's a trade-off. Now, most of the hats you get out of Ecuador are Brisa weave because they're faster to weave, and their quality is average. All right, the other thing that they do with these Brisas is you tend to have a natural edge. This is a sewn edge with a brimlock wire inside. The brimlock is steamed and put under pressure to form a certain shape, so the brim always looks good. But with a natural edge, like this one for example, you can see how they've woven it back in there. It'll tend to go a bit wonky, right? And whenever you wear them, you'll need to smooth them out to make them look good, because they need constant maintenance in order to make them look good. And when I walk down the street and I see Panamas and they're all wonky, it's kind of like seeing someone with a disease. I feel bad for the people, and I'd love to get up there and steam them and fix them, but it's the way it goes. You can stiffen them with a bit of glue. You can use some spray starch, you can use some shellac, and that will help a little bit. But if you've got a good quality hat, it will tend to have a sewn edge. And the sewn edge just makes them all easier to use. The other style of hat, probably my favorite, is what they could call the Quenca or the Liso. And the Quenca weave is a zigzaggy kind of weave. Very elegant, crisp, sharp. It wears really well. It doesn't break very often at all. They are a tough hat. They're a little bit heavier, like they probably weigh another 50% more than the Brisas, but they're my favorite hat. Day-to-day wear, best on earth. And if you want to get into fancies, you got the Montichristis. So the Montichristis are a very dense variation on the zigzag weave. So it's done down on the coast, and the Montichristi hat really is the best hat. But for day-to-day wear, not as much. The edges tend to be a natural edge, so you have to care for the edge. Whenever you put the hat on, you're going to sweep your hands across it, and that will make it into a comfortable hat, and it'll always look a bit sharp. It's a bit small for me, anyway. You get the idea. The other thing I'll show you is what defines a Panama hat. So, strictly speaking, a Panama hat is woven from tequila straw in Ecuador by Ecuadorians. Now, lots of people have tried to grow the straw elsewhere, and they've tried to do it in China, but everyone's got a different strategy. And the only way you can really tell is to look at the crown. Just in the center here, you can see there's like a little circle that comes out of the center, right? It kind of spirals out, and that spiraling is a Panama hat. Now, no one really copies that at all. When the Chinese do their hats, they tend to have a square center, and the Italians tend to do more of a rounded center. It's more boxed. Sometimes I'll do a square with spirals, but that means you've got a Panama hat. Now, Panama hats have been around maybe 7,000 years, recognized by UNESCO as part of our intangible cultural heritage. They are probably the last remaining artisan craft that I know of. The Italians with leatherwork, maybe, but it's more recent. It is a truly ancient art form, and all the clothes that we wear around are all made in factories, on machines, but these things are made laboriously by hand. So someone goes out to the forest, or they go to a plantation, and they cut down the straw. They get these long green pieces, and they boil them, and then they dry them, and they boil them again, and then they dry them, and then they beat them, and then they strip them into long threads. And the more they strip them, the more they divide them, the finer the straw becomes. So if you get really down to it, you can get down to a hat like this, which is like a grade 32 Montichristi, and that is a great work of art. This one's called the Radiance. I always thought I'd make him for myself, but never got around to it. I'll try him on. This is what a Panama hat looked like 200 years ago. People would trim the edges up, but they would usually leave the crown as it is there, and they would fold them. They're so soft and so supple They just float through the air. That is a fantastic hat. But if you blow a $5,000 hat off down the street, you'll feel really bad. Anyway, that gives you a good idea of how the Panamas work. There's also complex weaves, there's crochet weaves, there's weaves which have patterns within them and designs with airflow. This is the Blue Valentine, fantastic airflow. My all-time favorite summer hat. It's really good to wear, keeps your head super cool. And the last thing is, one of the reasons why Panama hats are so good, apart from the fact they're natural and they're made from the earth in the old way, everything was made for, hundreds of thousands of years, is that they breathe. So the sweat from your head goes into the hat and is wicked away and cools your head down. So it's a porous material, much like leather or cotton, and it's just designed for humans to wear.